Richardson's Point, Iowa, which is very much on the Mormon Trail. And the beautiful new signage at Richardson's Point really illustrates the significance of this place. And Brad, Jocelyn, stand up so we can all see. There's Jocelyn back there. Work together with Brad, who have done remarkable work in preserving many, many graves that they've discovered in their ranch and their farm there at Richardson's Point. Worked out a beautiful, nice, smooth cemetery to remind us. We've been to your place
several times.
And Brad is also the president of the Iowa Mormon Trails Association. So in light of everything we've been talking about with the Nebraska Association possibilities, Brad knows the story and how this has happened and how it's working. So I've invited him to speak for the next 3 hours.
Okay, I'd like to thank you folks. I've got a lot to talk about, short amount of time. So if anybody's got any questions, just pop up a hand, or I can stop, or I'll be, Jocelyn, I'll be here after I get done speaking the rest of the afternoon. So I'd like to thank you. I'm glad everybody made it. Everybody has the same focus. It's either on history or your personal ancestry, history through the church. If you had somebody that came from Nauvoo or other parts of the country or the world and traveled the Midwest to Salt Lake City, it's a fascinating tale, as we all know. A little quick background, a little more than Dick gave. We live in southeastern Iowa near Milton, which our family has owned the farm since 1868. And Jocelyn, she's my partner and my right-hand man, best hired hand I've ever had. She came with me today. She's always with me. I couldn't do a lot of things without her, so thank you. I had a unique experience. I was born and raised right on the Mormon Trail, and it fascinated me. My dad bought about a 300-acre farm. He purchased a lot of small farms around the area. Everything was connected. But he bought a 300-acre farm that we always knew had some early Mormon graves on it. Didn't know much of anything about it. This farm was a unique farm in 1970. It had virgin prairie that had never been touched with a plow. And that ground had been owned by folks that were there when the Vanguard group came from Nauvoo, when they left in February of 1846. They camped early part of March for about 13 days on our farm, surrounding farms. Of course, when you have 500 wagons and 2,500 people, it has to be scattered out. But fascinating tales we've unraveled through the years. I was 9 years old when we purchased this farm. Like I said, we did not know anything. We just knew there was Mormon graves back there. My dad said, well, only way to find it, there's a piece of tin in this big oak tree that a tornado had dropped off. Just go straight north and boom, you'll find them. Well, it took me about probably 15 years before I ever found them. But with that intense curiosity, a lot of things have happened. The spot is known as Richardson's Point, which there was a family there, family named Richardson, and the Stewart family lived there also. What I have since found out in about 1842, 1843, some traveling missionaries from Nauvoo stopped and knocked on the door of Benjamin Franklin Stewart and his wife Polly. And I guess Polly had been deathly sick in bed, and they wanted to know if they wanted to lay hands upon her, and they did, and she was healed instantly. I guess she jumped up out of bed, said, I'm going to fix you supper, but before you leave in the morning, I want baptized. So that was how the very first Mormon church became in Van Buren County. Polly was baptized, her husband was baptized a year or so later, and a lot of their siblings and their families joined the church. So when the Vanguard group came through in March of 1846, there were 7 or 8 families that were Mormons. And a lot of those folks ended up leaving with the Vanguard group. So they they ended up out in, most of them ended up out in Salt Lake City or Utah. In fact, there's a small little town in Utah outside of Salt Lake City called Benjamin, Utah. It was named after Benjamin Franklin Stewart. I guess him and Brigham Young became friends, and he promised Benjamin, if he did do some work, go ahead of the wagon train, then leave his wife and search out river crossings that he would reward him. Well, that's how he rewarded him. He named a town after it. In fact, he and Polly are buried there outside of Benjamin. But my interest in these graves and the story of the Vanguard group kind of grew in 1995, excuse me. I started clearing a walking trail back to these graves because in 1996 was the reenactment of the Exodus from Nauvoo, and the wagon train was coming through. Well, we wanted to open a path up so that folks could stop from the wagon train and see the graves. And with that, I started making some acquaintances. There was a gentleman from Bloomfield, Iowa, which is about 12 miles from us. His name was Leon Wilkinson, and Leon at that time was the current president of the Iowa Mormon Trail Association. Well, Leon struck a chord with me. Great fella, loved the history. He was not a member himself, but he loved and respected the church history. In fact, he helped with the wagon train reenactment in 1946, that's 100. 1996 and 1997 with the reenactment. And with Leon's encouragement and help, we put up we cleaned up around the graves, put in a split rail fence, the Iowa Mormon Trail Association, and some grant money from the state of Iowa, put up an interpretive panel, and we put some benches back there. Well, that really started picking up a lot of foot traffic in March of 2014 with assistance from the IMTA, Iowa Mormon Trail Association, and the LDS Church. They sent a liaison that we started working with, a tremendous person. Her name's Susan Sims. She still works this day with the church, and she helped put together a rededication of the graves. So with that, we really we got associated within the church and the IMTA. I was not even a member at that time, but shortly after the rededication in 2014, I joined the IMTA, and then I became president approximately 2 years ago under protest, but it happened. It's working so far. I've loved it. Met so many fascinating folks. And I'll kind of give you some of the history of the Iowa Mormon Trail Association. Now they were initially formed around 1992, so that's been 30 years ago, and it was kind of it was an interesting group of people. The very first meeting they had was at Garden Grove, Iowa, which is well known. It was a stopping off point, way station for the early Mormon travelers. And they had over 50 people at that meeting at that time. They had folks from the church, they had historians, they had landowners that had spots that were significant to the trail history were at the meeting. They had historical church authors there, and the National Park Service was there also. And I'll tell you what, there's probably been 5 presidents of the IMTA in the past 30 years. But I look at it a little differently. Without that very first group of people that joined around 1992 to 1995, they laid the foundation for the IMTA. I mean, these folks were phenomenal. They loved the history, they respected it, they recorded, they researched, they read, they talked to people, called people, they went through surveyor notes. They started at Nauvoo and came all the way out here to Council Bluffs, Omaha area. And without that knowledge that they've given me to work with and the rest of us, I don't think we would probably be where we're at today. But it's pretty simple. All it takes is respect and curiosity and drive, and that's what those folks had. A lot of these people, they wrote county histories of the trails where they went through the different campsites. Now this was all before the day of the internet, so they spent time researching. So there's county history that they wrote. There's individual campsite histories. They've got just on and on what these folks did. Very amazing. I feel since I became president, I can go in a little different direction because they laid the groundwork for me at this time. The IMTA has always worked with the LDS Church as much as they could, and the National Park Service. And I personally wasn't there to know the extent of that communitive effort, but I know since I become president, it has exploded because I don't have to worry about formulating any history because for the most part, it's all there, or at least the basis of history. You never know all the history. Every day you find something new, but these folks really laid a good groundwork, and it goes back to the old thing of teamwork. I really respect these people, and unfortunately, like anything, a lot of these folks, their time, they've aged out. In the past year, I think we've lost probably at least six people that were so instrumental in formulating a game plan for the IMTA. But at least I feel we can carry on, and I feel very lucky because we have a tremendous working relationship from within the church. Dr. Bennett is, he's a well-known historian. We work with them hand in hand with a lot of things, get a lot of ideas and a lot of push forward. Yeah, this will work. We appreciate that so much. And with the National Park Service, it has been a wonderful relationship. We're working on some programs now with the help and guidance of the National Park Service. We're working on marking all the trails, the trail crossings, starting at Montrose, which is a small town across the Mississippi River from Nauvoo. So we're following the original Vanguard group, and where they traveled. I believe they're following the 1846 to 1848 travels of the Mormons out of Nauvoo. So we've started in 2008. In 2018, we got our first countywide signs up, thanks to the Park Service, in Van Buren County. And since then, we have got signs in Davis County last year, Union County 2 years ago, Lee County 2 years ago. Right now, we just signs are in the work for Decatur County. So we still have the mappings are done. We work with the Park Service. They send us maps, and then we just go over them and make sure that historically their maps kind of jive with the research. Unfortunately, the gal that was one of the founding members of the IMTA just passed away last fall. She worked on the maps, all the maps except for Potawatomi and Cass, I believe. Those are the only two we have not fully gone through and okayed everything between the two organizations, Park Service and IMTA. But we're working on that. We're working on some, trying to get some people that are more familiar with this area than I am. But great program. I'll tell you, from being a landowner, so I've got a little different perspective. I worked with the Park Service and the IMTA before I ever became a member. And it was smooth sailing all the way, very helpful. The Park Service just stepped up and very helpful, not pushy at all. Great organization. But 2018, we kind of got this thing rolling, and we've been doing 2, and hopefully we're going to try to get 3 done this year. So we've got some more work to do. We're getting pretty close to getting this project done, which will help people that travel the trail, because I'm hoping when we're done we'll have mapping brochures that tells you how to get from campsite to campsite or crossing. You can follow the trail from the Mississippi to the Missouri River. And neat project. I know I've spoke with people that have stopped in RVs back at Richardson Point. We've had bus tours, people on bicycles traveling the trail, people on motorcycles. So it's just a matter of getting the information out and the roadmap to folks, and they'll come. And of course, with that, you know, and unfortunately, this is what drives a lot of things. They do there is tourism dollars involved with these people. A lot of times they'll eat in your county, they'll buy gasoline, they may get tired of camping. If they do camp, they'll stay in a motel room. So there's a lot of benefits. The almighty dollar is a necessary evil sometimes. I don't even like to talk about it, but it is there. It does come with folks. Another interesting and nice project we've been working on. This has been an almost 2-year project, but it's finally coming to fruition. There was a lot of the old wayside signs that were put, and I know they're from here to Salt Lake City, but a lot of the ones that were put in Iowa in the mid-1990s have really deteriorated. They were made of a fiberglass epoxy, and they've just weathered, you know, it's been 25, 26 years at least. So the Park Service and the IMT worked together, and the folks from the Park Service offices came out, followed the trail, looked at some of these signage that were up, and made a decision which signs needed to be replaced first and foremost, because some of them were, you could not even read them at this point. And like I said, it's been kind of a 2-year project, but I will tell you, these signs are the most visibly breathtaking. They're beautiful signs. The artwork is so much more in depth than the original signs. The history, a lot of times been spent with the history on these wayside signs. I know Garden Grove, their new signs up. Excuse me, Prairie Trail Museum, they've got a brand new sign that's up. That's near Locust Creek Camp number 2. That's where the hymn "Come, Come Ye Saints" was written. So there's we're gaining. There's one here in Council Bluffs that's supposed to, I don't know if it got put up yet, but it's been delivered and it's over here right now. So there's still signs to go up in Nauvoo and Montrose and Bonaparte. So it's all coming together, but it really takes a lot of teamwork, and I've found it has become, we've made a lot of friends through this whole thing, and that's the key. Once you're on a little different realm with everybody, things really get done. And it's been a very rewarding experience. Trying to see if I missed anything. I could talk quite a while, but tell you, one of the benefits of an association that I have seen, it's a great way to get an information base. You've got people that could be 3 counties away that are very intimate with one site, with the history, and you don't know what the world is over at the next county. Pretty normal. That's what I have found. I have found our organization, the IMTA, people were very focused, and justifiably so, but with Garden Grove and Mount Pisgah, because they were so well known. But there's just as much history on some of the lesser known sites that's out there. Richardson Point, as I delved into it, I found out the two names of the people that are buried in our timber is Edmund Little. Now, Edmund Little was 30 years old, and he basically ended up getting pneumonia when he helped some of the last wagons across the Mississippi within the Vanguard group, and one of the wagons broke through the ice, and it happened to be his Uncle Brigham's wagon. Well, he got thrown in the cold Mississippi, came up under some ice, and more than likely inhaled a lot of water and became very sick. They had a thunderstorm that night, so he slept under the wagon, he and his wife, and he just didn't have a very good start. So within 10 days or so, they were in Richardson's Point in Van Buren County, and there was enough sickness within the wagon train, they decided to camp there for a while. But Edmund Little's buried back there, and there's a little 15-month-old child named James Monroe Tanner. He's buried back there. And what's neat about these sites, when you start learning them, the information kind of comes to you after a while. If not from yourself, from other sources, from people you've met. James Monroe Tanner, I mean, these two were part of American history. James Monroe Tanner, his descendants came over on the Mayflower. So that's about as American as you're gonna find. Edmund Little and his wife, Harriet, had a three-year-old child who was with him when his dad passed away. That was George Little. So George was with the Vanguard group, the left, in February 1846, and his mom ended up in Salt Lake City. She married Ephraim Hanks, which is kind of a well-known frontiersman within the Mormon church. And George was one of the first, 120 Pony Express riders. He was 16 years old when he joined the Pony Express. And little George he was born in Nauvoo, and his dad's buried in a little timber plot in Van Buren County, Iowa. So, fascinating stuff. The history, if there's folks that are interested in forming an organization, association in Nebraska of some sort, the history will come to you. Just a matter of time. It takes time and perseverance, but very rewarding. One thing the IMTA is doing, we are, and it's kind of came to us, but there's so many unmarked graves within the whole trek, the whole trail from here to Salt Lake Cities. And you've got, in Iowa, you've got the Northern Trace, you've got the wagon trains spread out, you've got the handcart trails. Just 3 weeks ago, I was contacted by Susan Sims, who we still work with hand in hand, that they had found a child's grave around Polk County on the handcart trail, and wanted to know if the IMTA was interested in helping marking the grave. And we just can't do it. We're doing a little reorganizing. We're trying to get more members in because we've lost so many, and we've got too many projects going. But so we've got that. A year ago, we were involved with a historical marker was put up in a small cemetery in northwestern Davis County for a woman named Mary Ann Morris Allen, and she had died, I believe, in May of 1846, and was buried somewhere within the creek of oh my, I can't remember the name of the creek, but Soap Creek, yes. Thank you. And you folks should know, Dean, I think Dean, you're related to Mary Ann. So they put up a marker. We were contacted by a great-grandson, and we worked hand in hand with him, got a marker put up, and since then, we've got a couple different leads, because they could never find where she was buried, did not have the exact location. So in the past year, we've got a couple leads of possibly where Mary Ann's buried. So there's a lot of things that comes to you, or it's come to the IMTA after you're in it long enough, and a lot of fun. We do have a Facebook page, which we correspond with a lot of people. Some people, throw questions at us or ask for help. We try to post some of the projects we're doing, kind of keep everybody abreast of like these wayside signs and the county markers that are going up. But it's probably gonna take a little while to get things rolling in Nebraska, just like anything, but you get the right people and the right interest, and you'll find it pretty rewarding. Yeah, is there any questions so far? I'm kind of running through this fast, but. Okay, if, like I said, I'll be here the rest of the day. Going back to Richardson's Point, I'll kind of jump around a bit, but I tell you, from starting out, we bought a property. We just knew there was Mormon graves in there. A lot of information has come forward, and this is probably what I find the most rewarding. A lot of unanswered questions kind of get answered. You never know 100%. But Richardson's Point was used as a stopping off place probably until about 1854 to the mid 1850s, and we determined the Iowa State Archaeological Department came down and did a survey of a log cabin that was a large log cabin built by one of the Richardson brothers, and around that log cabin, there was a gentleman with the Archaeological Department that was there when they did the survey, and he said there were a lot of buildings there. He said, I'm pretty sure it was a way station, which I've never really found a lot of at that point in 2015. I never really found a lot of documentation on Richardson's Point being a way station. But this gentleman came back who said there was a lot of buildings there, and he witched everything. And I wouldn't really have believed it either, but I was witching or dousing the same things that he was. And we found these 8 to 10, they were 15 by 30 foot structures. And within those structures, it was divided into 4 rooms. And he'd say, okay, dig right here. He said, you're gonna find burnt limestone and brick and charcoal. And I'll be darned, he was right. Every time. And of course, that had been a small fireplace within the way stations, or within those rooms of the log cabins at the way station. We found 6 pits, which were probably outhouse pits. We found another large structure, which was probably a barn, and that was in the middle of one of our crop fields. And I know as a small kid, every time I work a piece right behind where the buildings were, there was a well, an old limestone lined well. So I knew there was a homestead there. So they had their water source. So that was one of the mysteries we kind of unraveled. It's been documented, and in fact, Brigham Young documented that they loved, because the weather was so bad. If anybody's familiar with southern Iowa, when it rains and snows and freezes and thaws, you have a mess with all the different soil types, and that's it. The Vanguard group just got bogged down, so that's one reason they stayed at Richardson's Point. Well, the trails and roads were so bad that they offloaded and buried a ton of cannonballs and munitions, because the Vanguard group carried several small cannons with them for their own protection. Of course, they were kind of driven out of Nauvoo. Everybody's kind of fleeing for their lives, so they needed their own protection. Well, the roads were bad enough that they left those back there. Were they ever picked up at a later date? I've never found anything through my research, but we've never found anything either. We've done some metal detecting. I think we're going to start doing some grid work in time when we get a little chance, and see if we can ever find anything. But another thing we found was the gentleman who found, and we doused the way station site. He said there's also more graves back here around the two graves, and we started witching everything, and we came up with another 41 graves, and we drew a map of these graves. I've never found any documentation of who they are, or if there ever was it. I've never found anything that's ever said there were any more burials there, but everywhere we witched, they were in lines, and they were buried facing east and west. So there was some sort of burials back there. That research is kind of ongoing, but it's things like that when you start out on a project, you really never know what you're going to find. It's very satisfying. So if you're interested in doing something, I'd go for it, because it's very rewarding, and you've got a lot of outlets for help within the Park Service and the church. The Park Service, they've 2018 we dedicated Richardson's Point, the grave sites, as a historic site on the Mormon Pioneer National Historic Trail. And with that, when you get a site designated, the Park Service, they'll help you with site design, they'll help you with brochures. We got the most beautiful signage. We're right off a highway a bit, got a very nice roadside sign. We got us a park ranger for a day in a uniform. That was worth everything. That's an interesting day, a nice day. So I got the hangman's noose look from Dick, so I suppose I better wrap it up. And by the way, Dick, apparently you must have gave away those autographed glossy 8x10 photos of yourself yesterday you were talking about, because you didn't have any more today. Okay. Well, thanks a lot, folks. Appreciate it.